Welcome back to math. Today we're doing module 4, lesson 22. We're going to be talking about comparing the size of a product to the size of the factors, okay? So I've written some of this stuff out for us already, so let's get started. It says solve for an unknown. Rewrite each phrase as a multiplication sentence. So we have a third as long as 6 meters. How would I write that? Well, I would write that as a third times like a big 6. Now, when we do that, what are we going to do? Well, we're really doing this. 6 is on the top, and we put a 1 below it. Why do we put a 1 below it? Because this means I have 6 whole ones, right? So 1 times 6 equals 6. And 3 times 1 equals 3. Okay? Now, what if I put that in a fraction thing like that? The 6 would go on the inside, 3 on the outside. 3 times what is 6? 2. That'd be 6. This would be 0. So our answer is 2, right? So it's 2 meters, 2 meters long. What happens if we have 6 times as long as a third? Well, I could write it like this, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to put the 1 under the 6, and then I'm going to multiply across. So 6 times 1 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. And here again, how many 3's are in 6? 2. Okay? Now, it also asks, circle the scaling factor. Okay? What's the scaling factor? Well, in this case, the scaling factor is a third. Let me try that again. And in this case over here, I'm going to clean this up. So our scaling factor is actually 6 on this side. Now, let's draw these out. Okay, now, it says draw these a third times 6. Well, we could put on 6 in a box, right? But I'm going to cut it up so you can see the meters. There are 6 meters, right? So rather than just putting a 6 in the box and cutting it into thirds, I wanted to show you each one of these meters, okay? And then we're going to cut it into, we're going to make our scale thirds, right? So that would mean that we're going to cut it into thirds like that. So this would be 1/3 of 6, right? So how many meters is that? It's 2 meters, isn't it? 1 meter, 2 meters. So if I wanted to color those in, I could make this one pink. This one could be orange. And this one could be green. So I have them in thirds. You see how that works? Now over here, I wanted to show you the 6 boxes, okay? And I'm going to cut those into thirds, okay? And we're talking about thirds. So I'm going to just highlight these, just the thirds, right? So I have a third of a meter, 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 and a third of a meter. And I could say, I'm going to take this one and move it over here. So I'm going to cross this one off, right? And I'm going to put it in here. Does that make sense? Crossing this off and putting it in here. And let's see how many meters we have. Then I'm going to cross this one off and move it into here. Now, how many meters do I have now? That's right. I've got 1 meter filled in. I'm going to keep going. I took this one, crossed it off and moved it over here, right? I've got one more to cross off and move in here, don't I? Hey, I filled in another meter, didn't I? So 1 plus 1 equals 2 meters. Do you like that? You see the way that works? And see the difference. All right, let's move on. It says fill in the blank with a numerator or denominator to make the number true. Let me start it with this way. Maybe this would be easier. Let me pretend with you for a second. 5 times what is going to be equal to 5? Well, you guys are saying it's 1, right? But how would I write a 1 in fractions? Well, I could write a 1 in fractions as 3 over 3, right? So this would be equal, wouldn't it? Hey, that gives us a clue on one of these, doesn't it? Which one? Yeah, that's right, C. What do we want to put on the top of this guy? We're going to want to put a 5 up here because 4 times 1 equals 4, right? So that would make this true, right? Okay. So let me get rid of that. I'm going to go to this one because this one's a little bit, this makes sense. 5 over 5 is 1 whole. So if we're multiplying this number, whatever it is, or fraction, by 1 whole, it's going to remain the same, right? Now, what if we want it to be bigger, though? If we wanted it bigger, what are we going to have to multiply by? Yeah, something bigger than 1, right? So I could say 5 times 2 is greater than 5, right? Because this would be 10, wouldn't it? 10 is greater than 5. Okay, so what do we have to put up here to make this third bigger than 1 whole? That's right. We're going to have to put a bigger number than a 3, right? Because if it was 3 thirds, that would be like multiplying by 1, huh? So what do we have to do to the third to make it bigger than 1? Yes, we're going to want a 4 up here. Why? Because 4 thirds is a little bit bigger than 1. We could have a 5 thirds. We could have a 6 thirds. Whatever the case is, we want to make this bigger than 1 whole, right? So we could put a 4 thirds up there, and that makes it bigger because it's bigger than 1. 5 times more than 1 is bigger than 5. Okay? If I wanted to make it easier for you, I might say 6 over 3. What is 6 over 3? That equals 2, right? So if we put a 6 over 3 here, this would be 5 times 2, wouldn't it? And that would be 10. And 10 is greater than 5, right? 10 is greater than 5. Okay. Oh, hey, we want to make this smaller than 12. What do we have to do if the top number is 6? Well, if we had 6 over 6, this would be 12, right? And it would be equal to 12. So what do we have to do to this bottom number? We're going to have to make it bigger than the 6, huh? So we can have 6 sevenths. We can have 6 eighths, 6 ninths, 6 tenths. Here, what if I had 6 twelfths? What is 6 in comparison with 12? It's a half, isn't it? So I could say, hey, I'm going to put 6 twelfths in here, and a half times 12 is actually 6, and that's less than 12. So we would have gotten that right, okay? Now let's do this last part. It says we want to make these, we want to fix them so they're right. So 2 thirds times if we had, what do we have to do if we want to make it bigger? We want this number, if we want to make it 3 on the bottom, then what do we need it? If we want to make this bigger, we're going to have to make it bigger than what? Than 1, right? So let's have 4/3. And that's going to make this bigger than 1, which will make it bigger than 2/3, right? Will it work here? You bet. 4/3. It's bigger than 1. So 4 times bigger than 1 is bigger than 4. And this one, we could just go ahead and place it over here as well, because 5/3 times this bigger than 1 is going to be bigger than that, right? All right, now what are we going to do here? Oh, we need to make it smaller. So what do? We can't put 3 over 3, can we? No, that would make it equal. So what do we have to do to we want to make it smaller than 1, right? So let's just make it 1/3. Will that work here? You bet. Will it work here? Yes. Will it work here? Yes, it'll work there. So that way, we can use that same number in all of them and still make it smaller, because it's less than 1 whole. Whenever we multiply the fraction by less than a whole, we're going to get a smaller number than what we started with. Up here, if we multiply this number by something bigger than a whole, we're going to get a bigger number than what we have on the other side. I hope this was helpful to you. I love math.